Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy.
A speaker has not been elected. 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 The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Well, we have a special guest commentator today, the Count from Sesame Street. It took McCarthy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 times. Thank you, Count. 15 ballot votes. 15 ballot votes. It was the longest speaker's race since 1859. That's a long time ago, people. 5 days. 5 days they were at it. Okay? Each vote, except maybe the last couple, I think Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat leader, he won all of those. He should be speaker. He is the de facto speaker. It might just take him 2 years to get the gavel. One of the most crazy things that happened last night was in the 14th vote, apparently Matt Gaetz promised McCarthy that he was going to vote for him. And instead of voting for him, he voted present, which just means I'm not voting for him, but that's going to, in effect, bring down the threshold. And maybe he can win because he doesn't need 218 votes. He only needs 216 or 215 or whatever that threshold comes down to. So at the end of the 14th vote, McCarthy, an angry McCarthy, gets up, walks over to where Matt Gaetz was sitting alongside Lauren Boebert and starts to bully him. I mean, we're watching this play out because C-SPAN had the run of the House because no one was there to tell them they can't because Congress technically wasn't in session. And there wasn't a speaker. We're watching this play out. Matt Gaetz looks like a deer in the headlights. McCarthy is clearly pissed off. And then all of a sudden, Congressman Mike Rogers from Alabama walks over and starts haranguing Gaetz. And it looks like it's going to come to blows. And another congressman comes over and has to physically restrain Rogers. This is in the very same chamber where the January 6th insurrection took place partly 2 years ago to the day, almost to the hour. It's unbelievable that we were watching this play out in the way we were able to. But in the end, McCarthy won because he sold his soul. He cut all kinds of deals with the crazies. The inmates will be running the asylum. McCarthy is going to be wearing a straitjacket for the next 2 years or the next 2 months or however long it takes for him to either quit or get thrown out or voted out. It's just unbelievable that somebody with no core, no vision with anything other than to simply be speaker is the Speaker of the House. The concessions he made, for example, are so dangerous. Motion to vacate. All it takes is one caucus member to initiate a vote to get rid of the speaker. So, for example, Marjorie Taylor Greene could waltz into the chamber, say, I want $1 billion for my Jewish space lasers. And if McCarthy says no, she can scream, motion to vacate. And they could take a vote, and guess what? McCarthy could be gone. Or any number of other things, just as crazy. They want to impeach Jill Biden. It's going to be a total shit show, and if he doesn't kowtow and do whatever they want, they're going to vote him out. It's that old expression, careful what you wish for. So in addition to the motion to vacate, there were other concessions allegedly made, like various committee assignments, more Freedom Caucus members on rules committees. On the Rules Committee, he promised allegedly to hold votes on bills that are important to the Freedom Caucus, like on issues about border security and term limits. There's also a super PAC called Congressional Leadership Fund, which he's aligned with, and apparently agreed not to get involved in primaries on open seats. And when they're done with this, when the dust settles and they get back to quote unquote normal and try to govern, what are they going to do? They're going to start investigating Hunter Biden, Dr. Fauci. They're going to try to impeach Joe Biden, Health and Human Services Secretary Becerra. This is going to be the normal stuff, the new mainstream Republican caucus. But McCarthy's going to be operating in a straitjacket. So it's like, why have a dream to get your dream job only to set yourself up for disaster from the get-go? The other thing that's important to sort of ponder is the Trump effect. and how much or little it was this past week, how much it mattered in the ninth inning last night. We all saw that photo of Marjorie Taylor Greene very proudly holding up her phone with the initials DT on it because Trump was on the phone. She tried to give it to Rosendale, another holdout. He waved her off. So, Trump is clearly still there. His power, his influence, the fear factor, all of that has certainly been diminished over the last several weeks and months. But it'll be interesting to really try to see how this whole story unfolds in specific terms, just how much influence Trump did wield yesterday in pushing the victory to McCarthy. We certainly know what McCarthy feels because this is what he said last night.
I want to especially thank President Trump. I don't think anybody should doubt his influence. He was with me from the beginning. Somebody wrote the doubt of whether he was there, and he was all in. He would call me and he would call others. And he really was, I was just talking to him tonight, helping get those final votes. What he's really saying, really for the party and the country, that we have to come together. We have to focus on the economy. We've got to focus, make our borders secure. We've got to do so much work to do, and he was a great influence to make that all happen. So thank you, President Trump.
So there's no mystery there. He still has his, he's still a servile puppy. He is still just a weak, feckless coward who's pledged undying fealty to his master. The issue is how much power will the master have going forward. Jen, you read something this week that you want to read?
Yes. Jeff Greenfield clearly articulated how I feel, and the optimism that Reagan conveyed has been ripped up root and branch and replaced by Trump's view of American carnage. A nation assailed by enemies of every sort, foreign and domestic. Even after the rejection of election deniers last November in key state races, more than 150 members of the GOP House caucus will arrive in Washington, asserting the belief that in one way or another, Joe Biden did not legitimately win the White House. It is this legacy, Trump's legacy, that now defines the party, and it's horrifying.
Yeah, it is. And the biggest takeaway is that McCarthy and those who control the Republican caucus right now, they are the election deniers. They are the insurrectionists. Kevin McCarthy, almost to the hour, 2 years prior, tried to stop the certification of Joe Biden. Last night, he stood in the same place, basically, and accepted the speakership.
This is how we reward people. These are the consequences for the insurrection. Yeah.
This is who's running the Republican caucus right now.
Yes, and I just want to point out the big winners. Of course, you pointed out the Freedom Caucus, which is now going to hold our debt ceiling hostage. And they're going to hold the defense budget hostage, which is really a big win for Russia because we're basically funding Ukraine's war effort, and it's going to be fucked.
Yeah. Look, I always try to look at the silver lining, and the silver lining is, we probably will have Speaker Jeffries in 2 years, but God only knows what's going to happen, not just within the Republican Party, but as you're pointing out, Maddie, more importantly, what's going to happen to this country in those 2 years? How much more problems are we going to have to experience? How far down this road of crazy are we going to go because of what happened last night? We did pass the 2-year anniversary of January 6th. I do want to give a big shout out to the people who protected and defended and gave up their lives and bodies and state of mental health to protect and defend this building, this chamber, the Congress people themselves, our Constitution, our democracy. People like Michael Fanone and Harry Dunn and all the other cops that were awarded medals finally yesterday. We have to have a big shout out to them because there's a good chunk of this country that still doesn't appreciate or respect what they did. And, the last thing I want to say is, it's 2 years since that horrible day. And Donald Trump is not only just still free, but he's running for president again. Think about that. Think about how you felt on January 7th, 2021. And if someone said to you, 2 years from now, this guy is still going to be walking around and running for president again, you'd be like, no fucking way. And that's where we are. Hopefully that's going to change in the next couple of months, and we'll start to see the indictments come down. But this has just been a week where it's a lot of reflection, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger, and a lot of concern over what the future looks like. So let's get to our guest, S.E. Cupp, She is a CNN political commentator and most recently host of CNN's SE Cupp Unfiltered. Before joining CNN, she co-hosted MSNBC's The Cycle. She's a nationally syndicated political columnist, culture critic, author, and consultant who regularly writes for the New York Daily News, Glamour, and CNN.com. She was previously a consultant for Apple TV's The Morning Show, starring Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon, and Steve Carell, and also HBO's hit series The Newsroom. She has been a contributor to TheBlaze's Real News and contributing editor for Townhall Magazine. SE, welcome to the back room.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So we in the back room, before we get into all the typical political craziness, we like to try to get a window into people's souls. And so we asked two questions, one at the beginning, one at the end, to try to do that. And the first question is, are you a dog or a cat person?
I'm a dog person. I have a dog and I'm allergic to cats. So it was meant to be.
That's a pretty emphatic answer.
Preordained.
Yeah. Allergies pretty much decided for you.
Yeah, right.
So I want to, before we do get into the political stuff, I just want to peel the onion layers back a little bit about you, because I read some interesting things about you that I didn't know. You studied ballet in childhood, so you kind of had like an artsy fartsy background.
That makes it sound a lot more interesting than it was. I did ballet for 10 years. Eventually with Boston Ballet, so I was in a pretty competitive environment. And I'll be honest, it was not fun. It was pretty awful. While I learned a lot of discipline, it was not great. And I am pretty scarred from it, actually. And other dancers know what I'm talking about. So, it wasn't like I had this great hobby that I loved for so many years. I actually kind of hated it.
Yeah, well, I would bet a lot of kids hate it, because I would bet a lot of parents push their kids to do certain things. I'm not saying that's happened to you, but just in general, whether it's a sport or, dancing or stuff like that, it's sometimes acting, like a lot of parents just want to be stage moms and dads, and the kids end up hating it. They don't want to do that crap. They want to be out playing with their friends.
I think a lot of things happen like that, where you lose sight of like, am I actually enjoying this? Why am I here? In my case, it wasn't my parents. I sort of, on a whim at 6 or 7, decided to take ballet classes, and the ballet school in my town, we didn't know this, was this Vaganova Russian, very serious ballet school. And I could have ended up at like the fun dancing school where you do the competitions and you wear the cute clothes and the makeup. And I didn't end up there. And so I was just on this track of being yelled at in Russian for like the next 10 years. And
you didn't find that appealing in any way?
It was not a turn on. Although I joke, but like it was for me, actually. I got addicted to the competitiveness of it and just how badly we were treated, and like when you got praise once a year, it was like a drug. And so that's how I stayed in it. I was chasing getting to the next level or getting better or getting praise, and I never enjoyed it. And I didn't realize that until after I quit, like how little I liked it.
You just reminded me of something which I hadn't thought about in years. My daughter, who's now almost 19, she took gymnastics for a while. And she always claimed that she didn't like it, and then she stopped. And then a couple of years after that, we were talking, and she revealed that she just didn't like the Russian guy who was the instructor. He was just always yelling at her. So
amazing.
That is pretty funny. I sounds like there's probably a lot of that all across America. Real Russian
a good teacher
collusion
goes a long way, and a bad teacher really can mess it up forever.
Well, that's true. And then so you went off to college, and you sort of had like between grad and undergrad, you art history and religious studies, which is also another interesting mix. I wasn't aware of.
Super useful.
Yeah. Big money, and there's huge money in religious studies. That's what my Jewish mother always said to me. Go into religious studies. Forget law. Yes. Religious studies is where the money is.
Never work another day in your life. Yeah. I'm sitting on a huge pile of religious studies money. No, luckily, again, my parents didn't push me to do something more useful. They said, study what you want, because they knew I'd find my way. I was like hyper ambitious, so they weren't worried that I was like, taking an easy class, they knew I'd figure it out. And I did. And actually in college, I worked at the college newspaper, and that's where I got my real education. And art history was great. And I did a lot of writing in that. And I learned a lot about a lot. But the newspaper is where I got my real education. It's where I knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And, which was right in some capacity. And so when I left, I ended up at the New York Times, and they had a program where they'd pay for grad school. If it was somewhat related to what you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But you had to take one course a semester. So it took me 6 years to get a 2-year master's. But free education, I'm going to take it.
Right.
And so I did it. And I got a religious studies, sort of a faith studies comparative degree at night, which again, I learned a lot about a lot. And so it was helpful, also just helpful to be in a rigorous academic environment as a writer while I was writing, and I was writing my book at the time. So it was all helpful, but certainly not like, here's the path you take, right? You get that art history degree, then get that religious studies master, and you'll be
and then cash in.
Right.
And all your financial dreams will come true.
Right.
So, no, I think it's really interesting to study religion. I went out with someone for a long time who had studied that in college too, and she certainly was not a religious person. She did it just for the intellectual curiosity part of it. And so much of the world is religious, right? And
right.
From my perspective, so much of the bad shit in the world is rooted in religion. So it seems, it's almost like, you can sort of justify, like, everyone should get a law degree. No matter what you're going to do in life, you should have a law degree.
Yeah.
Everyone should also study religion, because it's so much of where we all come from. And to this day, as we know, and we get into in a minute, impacts so much today, and it's interesting when I see people who studied religious studies who I never thought would do that, because it's an interesting layer of a background, to have, I think.
Well, and you're absolutely right, because it touches everything, right? I mean, from human nature to politics and history and culture, you can't get away from it. I'm an atheist. I've tried,
right.
But you really can't get away from it. And so to learn about religion, either from a historical point of view or even a biological one, and what I studied for my master's program, I was looking at the way devotion moves people. And what I did is compared it to sports fandom and the ways in which we behave when we are devotional, either to a religion or sports team. And there were so many overlaps in the ways we worship, the ways we commune. That's really important biologically to people, to be with people who agree with you or see the world the way you do or love the things you love. The rites, the rituals, the miracles, there's a ton of stuff in there that to me seemed instructive and learning about human nature.
Right.
And so it was, I thought, very useful. And I think if you have no curiosity about religion, I think you're missing out on a huge chunk of, the human condition.
Right. No, I totally agree. Now, on Twitter, where it says religion, in your bio, you have Jack.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, does that just mean like Jack shit, like no religion, or like what does Jack mean?
Jack's my son, and he's what I worship.
All right. Boy, was I off.
I like where you went, and I didn't know.
No, I saw that, and I was like,
so
is Jack Dorsey? Like, what's happening here? Like, she worships the Twitter founder? Like, what? Maybe. I mean, Elon Musk is like totally fucking that company up now. Maybe she does worship Jack Dorsey. Like, so I'm glad it's something so much more simpler and logical.
Maybe I should revisit that, knowing how ambiguous it is.
No, I think it begs questions, which is good. And I like what you said. You were quoted as saying, I really aspire to be a person of faith someday. What does that mean? Why do you want to be a person of faith?
I think years ago, that was probably true. And certainly as I studied religion, I wrote a book about religion. I admired religious people, and I know a lot. There's a lot in my family. I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic schools. And I have evangelicals in my family and born agains in my family, and I
sounds like you must have had a fun Thanksgiving.
Yeah, well, yeah. So
Oops, won't go there.
Some divides in the family, but I always admired religious people, and I thought, what a relief it must be to have this thing, this fixed value set, this belief to lean on. And I don't mean that derisively or condescendingly. I mean, really to lean on, like, that must be very helpful. And in times where I've had stress or depression or anxiety or, been in conflict, that would have been really nice. And I don't have that.
But do you think you would have utilized it the same way? And this is I could talk about this particular aspect of this conversation probably for 3 hours. But as someone who is super smart, right, which you are.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Do you think you really could have used that the same way other people do? Or would you be like, no, that's just hooey-fooey stuff? Like, there's a reason why you're an atheist.
That's why I'm an atheist, because I can't wrap my brain around it. So, yes, I'd have to make that leap. If I were a person of faith, I wouldn't be me. And it doesn't mean I would be unthinking, but I, there's a part of my brain that would have to work differently for me to get there. And I think if I got there, then sure, I would use it. But I can't get there. I just can't buy into it. And that's true of all the religions. They all sound incredulous to me. And conflicting and problematic. And as you say, some in some ways have been a real force for some not great things.
Mm-hmm. Except the Festivus followers.
They have figured it out.
They figured it out.
No, I don't think I could have. I don't think I can get there. So my aspiration to be a person of faith is more theoretical. Like, it must be nice, but I don't think I'll.
Yeah, well, the point I was making is, like, when something bad happens, like let's say you're in a hospital because of a loved one is really ill, whatever. There are those people that will go straight to the chapel and pray.
Yeah.
And then there are those that'll just be on the phone speed dialing everybody to get the name of the best surgeon in the East Coast.
Yep.
If you're the latter, you're probably more likely not to be leaning on religion too much in your life, because in order to lean on religion, you have to buy into the whole thing like it's God's will and this and that and all that stuff that doesn't, to some of us, doesn't make much sense. So I don't know. It's just an interesting thing. Religion is fascinating because I mean, I do know really bright people who are very religious, but I also think that they kind of know it's a little bit of a scam.
Listen, because I know, I mean, there are some very smart people in my life. My best friend, James, is Jewish and, very serious about his faith. And he's a lawyer and, incredibly rational. And he really does lean on his faith a lot. Mm-hmm. And that makes you feel good. Then I'm not going to question the way your brain is wrapping around it or question whether you really believe it. I mean, I think he really does. And that's helpful. And I love that for him.
Mm-hmm. My late wife, Adrienne Shelley, who was an actor and filmmaker, she's used to say she's an optimistic agnostic.
That's a really nice way of putting it.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Because it's kind of it means like you think most of it's kind of full of shit, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's something.
Well, it's a good way to hedge your bets. Certainly.
Yeah. So you mentioned anxiety and the challenges you've faced and went public with. I think it was about 2 years ago. You wrote a great piece. I mean, I know people in my life who struggle with that, and I think it was really admirable that you went public and did that. First of all, I hope that you're doing well, obviously. But what did you feel? Because a lot of people don't do this. What did you feel was so important to be public with that?
Well, it was a mix of things, really. The first reason is I had a nervous breakdown 2 years ago. very suddenly, like hit me like a truck. And the good news in that is that I knew I needed help right away. There was no like, I'll try to work this out myself. I needed help right away, and I got it. But I had a column due the next week, and
when you're on deadline,
I couldn't put words together about anything in the world. Political stories, news, things I'd been covering for my whole life and wrote about every day. I couldn't. The only thing I could vocalize was how I was feeling. And so one, it was motivated by, I want to turn in a column. I don't like to skip weeks. And then I had just been covering Naomi Osaka, Meghan Markle, Simone Biles, women who had come out with their own mental health stories. And I'd been defending them going public because they had been getting some attacks from idiots like Piers Morgan and Megyn Kelly, who were calling them entitled and spoiled and all awful things that help no one and are completely unnecessary and a waste of your platform. But so I also felt, well, it would be so hypocritical of me to hide this when I'd just been talking about how brave these women were and how helpful it was. And, so it was that combination of things. And when I did, it was liberating. But also I heard from so many people who were having the same feelings, going through the same things. And listen, I'm still going through it. I get help in therapy, and I'm writing a lot more about it too. It's an ongoing process to deprogram the way I had been living for almost all of my life. Catastrophizing, focusing on the worst things that could happen, visualizing them, transferring bad news would, happen to someone else. I would put it on and feel the emotional weight of it, and just awful habits that I've been doing for a really long time. So it takes a lot of work to declutter that and see the world in a different way. It's hard. It's really hard.
Was there a particular, I know that it was probably during the COVID period also, but was there a particular trigger that brought on this?
There was, and I mean, this is real specific. I was scrolling on Twitter, doom scrolling as I do, or did, and I came across a video of a kid on a ventilator during COVID. And listen, I'm in the news business. I see awful video all the time, all day long. Sometimes stuff that's too graphic, we don't put it on the air, but I have to see it when we're putting stories together. And so I was used to it, but this day, man, my body was like, no. And I had a panic attack and couldn't breathe, couldn't see. And for the next 72 hours, I was completely incapacitated. And that's what I say, like, I needed help right away. There was no sleeping it off. My body was rejecting what it had been doing for so long, this overload of awful news. And it's not just COVID, although that definitely made it worse. Political stuff. I cover the Syrian war, and I work with children who are victims of the Syrian civil war. And so that's in my side life in the philanthropic work I do. And so it was all of it, and it was all the time. And what my therapist said is, like, I OD'd that day. And so, yeah, there was a trigger. It could have probably been anything. Kids are particularly tough for me, but like everyone. But that was what happened that day. And, it really challenged me to look at how I was using social media, interpreting the news, processing the news, and living like my day-to-day life. Like, why did I think the ambulance that was going by was coming to my house or going to my kid's school? Why did I think that? So it's been a lot of work, but I'm getting off the anxiety train is really hard but it's so important and liberating. I didn't know you could not live like that, you know?
Yeah, well, it's important. I mean, again, it's important what you're doing, because I read a book years ago, a great book. It was by one of the Kennedy kids. I think it was Patrick, maybe, calling out how understood mental health and anxiety and depression is in this country, and how so many people suffer from it. And because of COVID, how many kids now, teenagers, how it's exacerbated those challenges, and how we need. I think the point of his book was that we just need to elevate mental health the same way to the same level as physical health, in terms of how the medical profession views it, how the insurance companies, like, you go to the doctor because your stomach hurts, you get treated, nobody makes any judgments. If you go to the doctor because your head hurts and your mind hurts, then there's something wrong with you, and it's like, we don't cover that. Or, I mean, it's just crazy. And I think so for people who have a perch like you do to share those experiences, it's really very valuable and admirable to do that.
Well, and I also think, to your point, in addition to the stigma, anxiety is misunderstood specifically. Because if you don't talk about it, well, people just think, of course, everyone's worried. Who isn't worried about something?
Right.
That's not what I'm talking, the anxiety disorder that I have and other people have is not where I'm not just worried. It's a debilitating way of living. It's in a way delusional, it's irrational. Catastrophizing is an irrational thought process. And so to talk about it, I think, really gives people some language to use and an understanding of what it actually is. And maybe I wouldn't have known I had anxiety until I figured it out. So maybe talking about it will let someone know, oh, the way I'm living doesn't have to be that way. And maybe I should get some help for this. Maybe I am suffering and I don't realize it. So that's why I talk about it so specifically, because anxiety, unlike depression and some other mental challenges, we just don't really define it often, and distinguish it from just like day to day, I'm worried.
Yeah. And, look, generationally, sometimes it's hard for people of one generation to understand what, because like there are people that are probably, I don't know, kids today, they all have anxiety, blah, 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 blah. Yep. Well, but, kids probably had a whole shitload of anxiety 50 years ago too, and it's it's like dyslexia. It's like we didn't know what to call it or what it looks like, and now we do. So I think that's a great thing. I'm going to shift to what is your party affiliation today? I kind of feel like it's hard to put you in a bucket the same way it is like with religion. Like you sort of march to the beat of your own drum. Are you still are you a registered Republican, or are you independent now, like a lot of ex-Republicans are? Like, where do you sit today? I know you're, very anti-Trump and Trumpism and all that, which a lot of people are. But where do you stand with your core?
I don't know. I wrestle with this all the time.
Sounds like you're an optimistic conservative.
Yeah, right. And I am actually, and I'm that's easy. I'm conservative, and that part that's a set value set, and it doesn't change with whoever's in the White House or whatever the Republican Party says it is. I'm conservative. That's easy, but the party affiliation's harder because I don't think they would call me a Republican, and I don't recognize this Republican Party.
Right.
The Republican Party that I was a part of and worked on the 2012 autopsy when we wanted to reach more millennials and LGBTQ and women and minorities, that is completely gone. That project is gone. They don't care about reaching more voters anymore. They care about purifying the party so that it's like 100% Trump concentrate. And that's not interesting to me. I think that's really gross and dangerous. And the policies and principles that the Republicans have jettisoned just to maintain one guy's, minimal interest and favor in them, I think is going to have real deleterious effects for the party for decades, not just like right now or maybe a couple years, but decades. It's going to be hard for Republicans to win new voters back if they one day get interested in doing that. So I'm a registered Republican and I vote Republican locally. I mean, my local Republican lawmakers are great and normal and rational and talk about things like taxes and the debt, normal things, not like book bans. But I'm not like the National Republican Party has no interest in me, and the feeling is mutual. And so, it's almost irrelevant what I call myself. And I'm hoping one day to be a Republican again, the way I was, but the party has to completely reinvent.
So it sounds like you're the what we've come to know over the years about a lot of people is that you and correct me if I'm wrong, and I certainly don't want to put you in any buckets, but like fiscal conservative, socially more liberal, able to vote for Democrats if the Republican candidates are just crazy, which is where we're seeing a lot of people on the right be these days, especially in the media. I mean, my God, how many people in the right wing or even ex-Trump people? I mean, I've had people on this podcast who used to work for Trump, and another one coming up, and it's that's just an easy demarcation line is the Trump thing. But once you get beyond Trump, and it's like you still have your conservative values, but then you can fit in any kind of bucket, like the fiscal conservative, social liberal bucket, or just hardcore conservative all the way. But it's like the country has shifted. When you talked about LGBTQ rights, same-sex marriage, abortion, blah blah blah. It seems like forget party affiliation. Just like most of the country is like, stay out of my life, my business.
Yeah, I think when Roe was in the news, I was looking back at abortion statistics, and it's, I think, really instructive to see where the country is. And I'm pro-life, but I have no issues with Roe. I think it should be legal. I think abortion should be legal, safe, and rare, which used to be the Democratic platform as well. And I'm pro-life, which means I won't go get an abortion. That's all that means. Your right to get an abortion is your right, and I support it. And that's actually where most people are. If you go back and look at Gallup's polling on abortion attitudes in this country, from 1976, which is the first time it started polling abortion attitudes, till now, the attitudes on abortion have remained fixed, meaning the majority of people in this country have always believed that abortion should be legal with some restrictions. Just under that, minority of Americans have always believed, and this is like almost like a straight line from 1976 to now, have believed that abortion should be legal in all circumstances, no restrictions. And way under that, a smaller minority of Americans believe that abortion should be illegal in all cases.
Right.
So that has not changed in the 50 years that we've had Roe. So when the Supreme Court comes along and says Roe no longer exists, fend for yourselves, and Republicans, the Republican Party decides, yeah, let's go with this. The minority of minority opinions in this country, which is with ban all abortions, you just think, who are you doing this for? You're doing this for such a small fraction of people. I guess it's good that you're giving them a voice. I'm sure they're thrilled with that, but that's not where the country is at. And I think that's the case on a lot of it.
But it stems back to the religious conversation. It's religious fanaticism. It's like The Handmaid's Tale. It's just it's a small group of white men who've decided what is the right thing to do for everyone, and women especially, and it stems from religion. When is the Bible say a child is become a child? Is it conception? Is it this? Is it that? So it's kind of crazy. But today we are on the second anniversary of January 6th, deadly insurrection. We were talking about this earlier, that it's hard to believe it's 2 years, but it's also hard to believe that someone like Trump is still not only walking around free, but running for president again. Like that he has the ability to do that. This shit is so normalized that this man can actually be considered a candidate for president. What are you feeling today as you look back on that day?
Well, I was watching CNN this morning with my husband, and they were showing footage from the day, and I've seen all the footage, right? And we were both like, I still can't believe that happened.
Right.
I still cannot believe that happened. That many people got swept up in this cult of election denialism and Trumpism and QAnon and white nationalism, all this melange of stuff that motivated these people to go and try to overturn an election violently. I can't believe that there were that many of those people. I can't believe that Trump still hasn't been held accountable. I can't believe how disorienting it was to see people who probably voted like I did 5 or 10 years ago use an American flag to assault a police officer. Like wild, like world shifting stuff. And so I'm still in a bit of disbelief. And I'm very angry, the way I was angry after 9/11. I'm very angry that the people who coerced that, and in many cases organized it, and defend it, and then whitewashed it, are still kicking around. And I've been rewarded in some cases for that. It really angers me.
Not to get back to religion, but it's like another thing you can kind of attribute to religion. It's like Trump is like the prophet, right? So it's whatever the prophet says. Like, it's this crazy cultism. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned white nationalism. There's also, Christian ethno-nationalism, which I think has a lot to do with not just January 6th, but just, your ex-party in general. It's like, it seems like the party has completely, utterly co-opted religion in such a diabolically evil way. And January 6th is just a manifestation of that. It's like the cult, the prophet, this is what we believe. It doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. It's what, the prophet says and wants, and we go do it. I mean, they literally were waiting on the steps, like with their phones going, has he tweeted yet? What should we do? Like, I mean, we now know that they were literally there because he sent them there, and they were waiting for orders. Like, like he's Jesus.
I mean,
Orange Jesus.
Two overlapping things happening here. One is that Christian nationalism is a huge part of Trumpism and was a huge part of January 6th. And I've written about the, Trump is Jesus flags and all of the weird religious co-opting of that day. But listen, the relationship between the Republican Party and evangelical movement is long and old, predates Trump. And that's one thing. The cultism around Trump is, I think, different, because it obviously has nothing to do with, Christianity. He's a terrible Christian if you're looking at the way he behaves, and nothing that these people did on that day had anything to do with what Christianity preaches, at least. It's a cultism that is completely outside of religion and reality, by the way. But when you go to like a Trump rally and you see people who really believe JFK Jr. is coming back to run with Trump.
Wait, you mean he's not?
Yeah.
Are you implying he's not?
I mean, don't tell them. But that guy's dead, and it's sad, but he's dead.
He's
not
him.
coming back.
Yeah, it's insanity.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
and so that
beyond.
cultism that like led someone to say, and it didn't happen that day, right? This was Trump conditioned people over those years to say, I'm the only person you can trust. You can no longer trust lawmakers, which I know you used to. Law enforcement, I know you love cops, you can't love them anymore. The generals, I know you guys are pro-military, you can't trust them anymore. The intelligence community, I know you guys love that, but not anymore. It's just me. I'm the only one that matters. So they were conditioned to believe that. And in some cases, abandon their jobs, their families, part with money, friends, their community, their faith, their morals. I mean, all of it was abandoned in many cases for this guy. That's cultism 100%.
Sure.
There's no way around it.
And you mentioned evangelicalism has always been around, and you're right. But like, back in the days of like, the Ralph Reed event, like back then, if Trump shot someone on Fifth Avenue, like Ralph Reed would go, wait a second, we can't, that's it. He has to go to jail. Today, the evangelicals are like, wait a minute, that nun deserved it. Like, that's the mentality. That's the mentality that exists.
Including Ralph Reed.
Yeah.
Including Ralph Reed.
Insane.
Like, it is crazy. And,
I mean, I've read somewhere where you said something like, you went on record by saying Trump never grabbed you by the genitals, right? But I remember watching the Trump rallies a few years ago, and like women would be walking around with T-shirts going, he can grab my, anytime he wants. Like, really? Like, Can your daughter wear that shirt? Like, what the fuck is wrong? How? Yeah. And this is what we're talking about. It's like, there's no logic or reality to anything anymore with these people. Because it literally is, it's Jonestown without the cyanide.
It's Jonestown 100%.
Yeah.
We hope it doesn't end that way. But listen, there's the group of people who know better. Mm-hmm. And so abandon principles for power or, to grift. But there's a lot of people who really just, there's a mental break.
Right.
And it's total cultism, a denial of reality, conspiracy theories. Mm-hmm. I mean, for a lot of people, I think, in the movement, I'm just talking about Republicans who voted for Trump. I'm really talking about MAGA, MAGA Republicans, the kind that were motivated to go to the Capitol on January 6th. It's a total reality break where, what they would have done or said 5 years ago is unrecognizable from the person that they are now.
Right. And so speaking of lack of reality and craziness, what do you make of what's happening in the House right now? Like, that is the definition of insanity.
100%. Let's do it over and over again. Literally get the same result. And hope this time magically something changes. It's weird. Like, is there math that Kevin McCarthy knows that I don't? Is he using the new math? Like,
yes.
I don't understand. Just the inability to whip and count before any of this happened is the first thing that's mind-boggling. And then as it keeps going, we keep hearing, well, there's meetings. And, he's been talking to some other people. And yet nothing, like, the vote does not change. So I don't know if he knows something we don't. Maybe that's true, and maybe he is peeling people away secretly. But it's such a humiliating exercise to watch. Even if he does squeak this out, what a weakened, position he'll be in. And just imagine being Kevin McCarthy and having so little like self-respect, dignity, integrity, that you would concede that one person could kick me out at any time. Sure. Like, that's crazy. And yet that's just how bad he wants this job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not necessarily a gambling man, but I would bet if he becomes speaker, which I'm not sure he's going to, but if he does, within a week, Lauren Boebert's going to ask for some bill. And if he says no, she's going to be like, vote to vacate. Like, that's how thin his power is. It is. I mean, look, I'm a libtard and I can't stand these people, and I feel humiliation. So when they show when the camera shows him, I'm like, what? And he's laughing and smiling, because he has to. But what is he feeling on it? What is his wife, his kids, his friend? Like, it is pathetic. Like, after the third vote, you might say, all right, maybe there's a method to this madness. They're doing something. They're maneuvering.
Right.
After 11 votes, where he hasn't moved the needle once, right? And the other side is just as crazy. They're like, we need Donald's first black. What's today? No, fuck, screw him. All right, Hearn. Now we're gonna go.
Kevin Hearn.
Like, yeah. And now all of a sudden, like, the black guy doesn't matter anymore. It's like they have no idea what they're doing, and it's just such a shit show. But it's like, this is what they promised voters. Like we're gonna be more effective and efficient than Democrats. We're gonna be leaders like you've never seen before. They can't even get out of their own way. You know, after a week, we don't even have a house. We still don't have a House of Representatives or a Speaker.
It's crazy. But it was never about what voters want. Obviously, these people are motivated by their own ambitions on all the sides. Kevin McCarthy, the Lauren Boeberts, the Matt Gaetzes. They went to Congress to become famous, and burn it down.
Mm-hmm.
And McCarthy came to Congress to be Speaker. That's really all he wanted, and he was happy to abandon, policies, principles, convictions to get there. Except he didn't get there. He did all of that and didn't get there. And like I said, even if he does, he'll be in such a weakened position. I said before all this started, maybe a month or so ago, someone asked if I thought McCarthy would be Speaker, and I said I think he will, but not for long, because I just knew the caucus. Like I know these people and what they were going to do to him. Now I don't know that he'll actually become Speaker,
right.
But to your point, if he does, it won't be for long.
Right. And it's hard not to watch. I used to do stand-up for many years, so everything to me goes through the lens of comedy. So it's hard not to watch this. And like when I watch it, I'm finding myself watching it as if I'm Chris Rock. Because like when the guys get up and they go like, I'd proudly like to nominate Kevin McCarthy, I can hear Chris Rock going, again? And proud? Like, are you fucking crazy? Like, one after another. They just keep getting up and going, I'm happy to nominate. Like, where have you guys been the last 3 days? It's a shit show. Move on. But as a libtard, I'm starting to feel less entertained now, and actually like worried for America. Like if that lunatic in North Korea sends a missile to California, like we have no House of Representatives that can sit down and weigh the options. We don't have. I think that's what people don't really understand. It's not just about Speaker. We can't swear the rest of them in unless there's a Speaker. So we have only one chamber of Congress after a week of supposedly the 118th Congress beginning its session. That is just crazy. So it's starting to get a little dangerous that they're not functioning. Yeah. I want to ask you about Mike Pence. You wrote a piece recently. I think you and I agree 1 billion% on Mike Pence. But you said the piece is called "Mike Pence Has No Prayer of Winning in 2024," which I think is an interesting play on words, by the way. I'm sure you intended it that way. Quote, among the GOP's biggest base of voters are the MAGA crowd, and we largely know how they feel about him. They told us as they marched on the Capitol on January 6th, yelling, hang Mike Pence. Yet Mike Pence can't still seem to condemn Donald Trump. He's like, I hope they don't indict this guy. Like, what? What? He tried to hang you.
So, like, emasculating these men.
Oh, God.
Who have been so emasculated.
I literally feel
Trump,
my
right?
testicles shrinking when Mike Pence talks. Like, literally, my testicles are shrinking.
So are mine, and I don't have any. But, like, it's just so humiliating. I'm humiliated for them, and I don't know how they withstand it. They not only withstand it, they love it. And Kevin McCarthy was my Kevin to Trump. It's just so humiliating and emasculating. And I mean, Mike Pence can't see that in order to become president, he'd need the very guys who yelled, hang Mike Pence, to vote for him. That's crazy math. That doesn't make any sense. And yet he's not willing to go for the other guys, maybe people like me, who thought Trump was terrible, but still want some conservative, principles and values and policies. He's not smart enough to go for people like me by saying, yeah, Trump was terrible. He should not run again for president. He shouldn't be president. He should be disqualified and he should be indicted.
Right.
Like, that's not hard to say. He won't say it. So he's got no one. He's got no friends. He's got no voters. I don't know what he's thinking.
Well, you write that, and I quote, Pence somehow thinks he can split the baby, lightly criticizing Trump to re-ingratiate himself with the never-Trump crowd while defending Trump to keep MAGA happy. Except in trying to please everyone, he's pleasing no one, which is exactly what you're saying.
No one likes him.
Yeah. Well, what does he
Nobody
represent?
likes him. Who are his constituents? Who is his voter base? It doesn't exist.
No. it's kind of sad that, when you look at history, you judge all this from the lens of history. You take a guy like Dick Cheney, right, who, like him or not, probably the most powerful, influential vice president in history, right?
Yeah.
Then you look at Pence, probably the weakest, most meaningless. And then as a potential candidate for president, just so weak and feckless and offering nothing in terms of character or leadership or strength. Like, what does he offer people? What is he offering people?
I don't know. And I say that as someone who once really liked Mike Pence. I interviewed him. I did a long feature in a magazine and went up to Indianapolis and spent a day with him. And he's smart. And even though we weren't aligned religiously or socially, we were very aligned fiscally. He was like a deficit hawk. And then went in, to the Trump administration and blew up the deficit. Like, he abandoned all the things that I liked about him in the first place. And so I don't think he had, once he decided, okay, even though Trump and I completely disagree on virtually everything, I'm still going to go and work for him, carry his water, defend him, support him. Once he made that decision,
right,
I think his fate was sealed because he immediately lost me, the wing of, my wing of the party.
Mm-hmm.
And he was never going to be, everything that MAGA wanted him to be. He was never going to be the next in line. Trump didn't care about Mike Pence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't, to me, I thought, okay, well, he doesn't want to be president anymore, clearly. Mm-hmm. And yet here we are. He's running out to like New Hampshire every few weeks and Iowa, clearly thinking about running for president.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he doesn't, he's a coward, and I don't think he has the balls to run for president because it's hard to imagine him on a stage with Trump who would eviscerate him. Literally,
yes, and
just
humiliate him even more.
Yeah.
If that's possible. I mean, Trump called him the P word already.
Right.
I don't know how more humiliated he wants to be, but he would humiliate him even more.
Yeah. Well, that would be an interesting moment on the debate stage if one of the moderators said, "Mr. Trump, you've called him a P word. Is he a P word?"
This might not be hypothetical.
That would be so crazy. That would be where like on this debate stage, a presidential candidate, a former is literally asked if he's called one of his opponents a pussy. I mean, it's just
who used to be his vice president.
Who used to be his vice president? It's so insane. All of it is insane. So Liz Cheney, this is the last thing I want to ask you about. Is she the future of the party?
I was about to bring her up because in a different way, she also has no pathway to the presidency for different reasons. I mean, similarly, she is, very courageous in doing what she did and standing up to Trump and the Republican Party and losing her job over it, which was the right thing to do. I have to remind my friends on the left that she is very conservative, like more conservative than I am. And obviously more conservative than Trump, maybe even more conservative than Pence. Like, she's very conservative. Mm-hmm. So that, as much as, liberals and Democrats praise her, I think she's not winning any of their vote for like major office because all of her policies would be objectionable to most Democrats. And then over on the right, similarly to Pence, she's now looked at as a traitor because of her stance against Trump. So she's lost MAGA completely. Then there are people like me left who might, but again, she's a little too conservative for me. And I'm not sure there are enough me's left to vote her into office. And so I think she has a slim path to the presidency as well. But I think she can still be a very important voice, a moderating voice, not ideologically, but a moderating voice for like where the Republican Party should go and remembering its roots and remembering the policy positions that it cared about instead of this, the crappy culture wars that they're.
Is there someone that you think of for 24 that in the sense of attracting someone like you, someone that can even attract some folks on the left, perhaps? Is there a star in the Republican Party Who is that, if there is one?
I don't know that there's anyone that could attract someone on the left, but I look at Adam Kinzinger as a rising star of the party, and I've known him a long time, and I think going on the Jan 6 committee and really taking Trump on, I think helps him. It definitely distinguished him. But again, he'll have the same problem. There aren't enough me's to probably get him elected, and I'm not sure he would attract folks on the left, just ideologically. But I don't know that we need someone to straddle the parties to win a national election again. We the right. I think we just need a good common sense conservative and a little luck with the Democratic candidate, right? We need someone who's kind of a weaker candidate. And then I think we could win a national election again if we reminded voters who maybe were disappointed in Democrats or sat out, or independents disappointed in Trump, that there's a common sense conservatism still kicking around somewhere. And we don't want regressive bullshit like book bans and abortion bans. We just want like fiscal responsibility, some common sense foreign policy.
Sounds like you're talking about Larry Hogan.
Larry Hogan is fantastic. Larry Hogan has the same problem. MAGA hates him. So I'm going to ask you about MAGA, because if you look at, everybody talks about Trump's base. I've always said that, like, how I define the base is like, this is everyone that voted for him in 2016, okay? From the Marjorie Taylor Greens to the surgeon who just wants lower taxes. Yes.
We know over the years that base has shrunk, right? Yeah. Where it's somewhere, and now we see this week, like he puts out an edict, vote for McCarthy. No one gives a shit. Matt Gaetz nominates him for speaker. He gets one vote. No one's afraid of him anymore, at least in the same way. His relevance has dwindled dramatically. Is it possible that 6 months, a year from now, 2 years from now, the big lie gets exposed, he gets exposed, and then all of a sudden the Republican base starts to widen again, where it becomes more normal? Like, is that a possible scenario?
You're right about his base diminishing, but like I said, it's also condensing. It's getting more and more pure. And so they get less and less gettable for anyone else. So yes, they're shrinking, but they're so firmly with Trump, you have to write off 25% of the party.
Right.
Write them off. If you're not Trump, you're not getting them.
Right.
Well, that's a significant chunk.
Sure
25% is a significant chunk of any voter base. So then you have to think, okay, how do we get 75% of the rest of the party to compete with the left? And who does that? Is it Ron DeSantis? Is it Larry Hogan? You have to imagine that some of the people who aren't with the 25% of MAGA still really want someone like DeSantis, not Hogan. And so, I mean, it's very hard to see how the right nominates someone who is, rational, not MAGA, principled, who has a chance of winning. Very hard to see that.
Right. So this is the part where we ask our second window into the soul question.
Okay.
Music is a big window into the soul. So
Great.
I want to know S.E. Cupp's top 5 musical artists of all time.
Great. Number 1 is Queen.
Oh, cool.
Number 2, probably the Beatles. Number 3, Fleetwood Mac. Number 4, maybe Elton John. Number 5, this will blow your mind, Thin Lizzy.
Ooh, wow. Well, I'm happy you threw the Beatles in there, because I've done this like dozens of times now, and I think you're the second person to say the Beatles. I know it's insane. It's
obligatory.
Obligatory, exactly. There's the Beatles, and then there's everyone else in my book. But yet we've 100%. Gotten like everybody from Taylor Swift to Bieber, and I'm like, Bieber versus the Beatles?
No. What?
Bieber versus the Beatles. Yeah, Bieber in the top 5, not the Beatles. Yeah, I won't say who that was. Actually, I don't
you
remember
have
who it
to.
was.
That person
I can't.
should
Maybe
never be
offline.
invited
Offline,
back.
I'll tell you. I'll email you that. But I was like, are you crazy, Beatles? Anyway, Essie, you've been very generous with your time. You've been an incredible conversationalist. I really enjoyed this, and I do hope you'll come back again.
I enjoyed it too. Thank you so much. It was a great conversation. I appreciated it.
Alrighty, take care.
Okay.
So there you have it, episode 32 in the can. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a message at 845-307-7446. Email us at backroomandy@gmail.com or tweet to me at Andy Ostroy. And please leave a review if you like the pod. Reviews are important. I want to thank my co-producer, engineer, and editor, Maddie Rosenberg, associate producer, Jen Hammoud, Cricket Lengel for our artwork, Andy Hollander for our kick-ass music, Patricia Wynn and the Epicurean for the Backroom Studio, and a big thank you again to our amazing guest, S.E. Cupp. So keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and we hope you'll join us again next time. Have a great week.